Well, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is now out in cinemas, and what better way to celebrate its release and Jurassic Park's 25th anniversary than by celebrating the 20th anniversary of one of its most shameless imitators. Hi, I'm Danny Quinn, and today I'm doing something slightly different from what I normally do. I'm revisiting the Super Inc. Movie Club, which was sort of something I did back in July where I reviewed Steven Spielberg's classic Jaws. Things have changed a little bit since then, but the idea is ostensibly the same. One review per month on a particular movie or theme, and the theme for this month is any sequel or reboot to a popular or beloved film, which is why I decided to tackle Roland Emmerich's notorious 1998 film, Godzilla. And just to let you know, this review will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film yet, I would recommend seeing the film first and then coming back and watching this review, or not. It's entirely up to you. If you're not interested in seeing the film, by all means, watch the review if you want. The plot of the movie is that during a nuclear test in the French Polynesia, an iguana nest ends up being mutated, and in the fallout, a mysterious creature emerges. It begins wreaking havoc on several ships in the ocean and eventually surfaces in New York City. As the military try to stop the creature, radiation expert Dr. Nick Tatopoulos, played by Matthew Broderick, attempts to study the beast and makes a shocking discovery that might threaten the people of New York, and maybe even the world. The character of Godzilla doesn't really need an introduction. He's one of the most famous and iconic monsters of all time, and in the 60 plus years since his debut, he's appeared in 35 films. This movie was the first attempt by a big Hollywood studio to bring the character to a more mainstream audience, and it was quite hyped when it was first released. There was the famous teaser trailer set in a museum where Godzilla stomps on the bones of a dinosaur. There was also the slogan, "Size does matter." There was also the bus signs that would say, "His foot is bigger than this bus." It was kind of like the Batman v Superman of its day, and that was marketed like crazy, and everybody went in big numbers on its opening weekend. But once word of mouth got around and the response from the critics and audiences got around, it sunk like a stone afterwards. It wasn't really a flop or anything, but it didn't do anywhere near as well as it was expected to do, especially since director Roland Emmerich was already hot off the heels of Independence Day. As a result, despite the film doing pretty well at the box office, Sony quietly cancelled any plans for a sequel. So yeah, Godzilla 1998 isn't exactly a film looked back on with much fondness, but if I'm being completely honest, I used to dig the hell out of this movie. I'd always watch it whenever it was on TV, and I even remember renting it from the library when I was a kid as well, so I do have a bit of a nostalgic soft spot for this movie. But does that mean the movie holds up very well? Let's find out. I feel like the film gets off to a pretty promising start with this opening montage of nuclear test footage. I like the aged look of it, and I like the use of music throughout the scene. It's a very effective scene, it's very memorable, the imagery is pretty haunting, and for the first 30 minutes, I think the film is pretty solid. It's not too bad at all. I like the way that Godzilla is gradually built up, and the way he attacks these ships. We don't really see much of him at first, and we also see these giant footprints on land as he gradually approaches Manhattan. And the initial scene where he's running around New York wreaking havoc and causing chaos is a pretty entertaining sequence. What a shame then that the film kinda goes to shit after that. But even then, there are still a few issues early on. For one, you can really tell that Emmerich is trying desperately to emulate Steven Spielberg, and he's trying to recapture the same vibe that Spielberg did on Jurassic Park, right down to the fact that the score sounds very John Williams-y at points. To be fair, I don't necessarily mind him borrowing a little bit from Spielberg. Plenty of blockbuster filmmakers borrow from him to a certain extent. But there's a bit of a difference between borrowing and copying, and I feel like Emmerich is very shamelessly copying Spielberg here. And when we finally see Godzilla, the visual effects are very inconsistent. In some scenes he actually does look really good, but throughout most of the movie he looks pretty bad. Whenever Godzilla's first running around New York and you actually see him in full view, there's something about him that just looks off. I don't know how to explain it, but it just doesn't look very natural. The movement looks very stiff and it doesn't really blend in with the live action footage. But that's nothing compared to how the baby Godzillas look. They look absolutely dreadful. I'll give them credit for trying to go the Jurassic Park route for using animatronics for the close-up shots and using CGI for the wide shots. But the CGI on them just looks hideous most of the time. And the animatronics look pretty good. They're not quite on the same level as Stan Winston's work on the Jurassic Park films, but they're still pretty passable overall. well, the CGI just doesn't hold up anymore. Hell, it looks poor even by 1998 standards, let alone 20 years later. Another big problem with this film is the characters. They're not good. Even by Roland Emmerich standards, they're just bland, boring, uninteresting, generic, with the only real exception being Jean Reno as this mysterious French insurance agent. Part of that is because of Reno's really entertaining performance in the part. You can tell he's not taking the role very seriously at all. And also because he's probably the most interesting character in the film. But then you also got Matthew Broderick delivering a performance that would give Mark Wahlberg in The Happening a run for his money. You got Maria Patillo just flailing around not doing anything. And Hank Azaria is just completely forgettable. The only interesting thing about him is that his character has the nickname Animal for some odd reason. And the only other memorable characters of note are Mayor Ebert and his sidekick Jean, which is a very paper-thin satire of Siskel and Ebert, the critics, right down to the fact that they've cast actors who look very similar to them. And it is pretty funny seeing the mayor act like a complete child the whole time, being told off for eating sweets and throwing temper tantrums. But other than that, yeah, not really much of note. The only other memorable character is probably Harry Shearer's Maria Patillo's boss, who keeps hitting on her in every scene she's in. And I do find it pretty funny that Emmerich cast 3 actors from The Simpsons. You got Azaria and Shearer and even Nancy Cartwright in a brief role as well. Maybe they should have just called this movie Jub Jub or something. It's all just really odd. And speaking of odd, that's a good way to describe the humour in this film. It just falls flat a lot of the time. A lot of the attempts at humour just really feel awkward and forced. Like the now infamous scene where Nick says, "That's a lot of fish," and the soldier standing next to him just looks at him awkwardly as if to say, "Yeah, duh." Or when Nick's running around Madison Square Garden trying to escape from the Baby Zillas, and then he comes across a bunch of them eating popcorn and sweets. It's just awkward. It's so random. But even then, that's not really a huge issue. My main issue with this film is Godzilla himself. Admittedly, I'm not the hugest fan of the character, but this just is not a good portrayal of him. He looks absolutely nothing like the actual Godzilla, but really, that's minor compared to my other big issues with the titular monster. And I put that in quotes because not only is this motherfucker not Godzilla, he doesn't even do anything all that monstrous. Yeah, it's going around causing chaos and most likely killing quite a few people in the process, but it's not actively trying to kill anyone. The only time when this creature actually tries to kill anybody is whenever it's being shot at or when its young ones are being threatened. And believe me, I'm not the only person to have this issue. Writer and producer Dean Devlin himself acknowledged this in an interview several years back. He stated, and I quote, that "We did not commit to anthropomorphizing Godzilla, meaning we did not decide if he was a heroic character or a villainous character. We made the intellectual decision to have him be neither and just simply an animal trying to survive. This was a big mistake." And honestly, I agree wholeheartedly. I think this was a big mistake. Especially since we have so many scenes where we're supposed to root for the soldiers and the humans to try and kill Godzilla, when in actuality, more times than not, the human characters, especially the soldiers, just end up making things worse. Like when the creature comes out to eat fish and the soldiers just start randomly firing on him and then they start chasing him around the city and they end up causing more damage than Godzilla himself. And then immediately afterwards the soldiers all like, "He did all this to us. We did nothing to him." Well, aside from open firing on him and chasing him around the city, most likely pissing him off, yeah guys, you did absolutely nothing wrong except absolutely everything. Hence it's really hard not to root for Godzilla, and his defeat at the end is more tragic than anything. The poor creature just wanted to look for a place to raise its young ones, and this is the end result. They end up getting blown up in Madison Square Garden and he ends up getting shot with missiles. Speaking of the Baby Zillas, this is where the movie really begins to shamelessly start emulating Jurassic Park. The Zillas are basically like the raptors from that film, and what's shocking is that there's so little tension here. There's one pretty tense moment where the Baby Zillas have hatched for the first time, but otherwise suspense is really lacking here. This is a big sequence that should be very scary and very thrilling and very just oozing with tension. And yeah, admittedly it is a little bit exciting, but it's nothing compared to the velociraptors in the kitchen scene from Jurassic Park. And there's not even anything that shocking either. There's no really brutal kills or anything that really pushes the boundaries a bit. Everything just feels so sanitized and watered down. And I know the movie's rated PG and all, but the first 3 Jurassic Park movies are rated PG and they got away with quite a bit for the ratings, so if the Jurassic Park movies could get away with quite a bit of violence for the PG, I'm pretty sure this film film could have as well. Don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting a lot of blood and guts or a lot of gore or anything like that. I'm just expecting a little bit of teeth. A good monster movie needs teeth. It needs a bit of a rougher edge. This movie just really lacks that rougher edge. So then after being chased by some Zilloraptors and nearly getting blown up, our characters are then chased around by Godzilla even more in a taxi. The chase sequence is pretty fun, admittedly. There's some pretty cool stunt work, and I like that Godzilla's actually doing something here. And the bit with him chasing the characters on the bridge is admittedly pretty entertaining. But his defeat, like I said, isn't nearly as satisfying as it should be. Godzilla's meant to be near invincible, yet here he's taken down by a couple of missiles. It's a bit anticlimactic for Godzilla to be killed this way. Nevertheless, he's defeated. Like I said earlier, it's more heartbreaking than crowd-pleasing to see him die, which I seriously doubt was the intention of the filmmakers. But of course, there's still one egg left after all the baby Zillas have been killed, and it's just about to hatch in a shameless little bit of sequel bait for a film that will never happen. Cut to black, the end. Godzilla 1998 doesn't really hold up very well in my eyes, which is a real shame because I did enjoy this film quite a lot as a kid, like I said earlier. And I did used to wonder why so many people disliked this film, but watching it again, it's not hard to see why it failed. Yeah, it does have some fun set pieces here and there, and it does start out quite promisingly. Like I said, the first 30 minutes are quite effective. But after that, the movie just falls completely on its ass. Its pacing gets really sluggish, the characters are very boring, it's trying so desperately to top Jurassic Park that it kind of forgets what made Godzilla a great character in the first place. But even then, I can't quite say I hate this film, and I'm not sure whether or not the poor reception of this is because it has the name Godzilla. Like, maybe if this movie had been called something else, it would have probably been remembered as just some generic monster movie from the late 90s that nobody really cares about anymore. It just feels like they were trying to cash in on the Godzilla name. So with that being said, I'm gonna give Godzilla a 4 out of 10. It really isn't the worst movie I've ever seen by any means. It's certainly not Baby Geniuses or Battlefield Earth levels of awful. It's just a very disappointing movie. And yeah, I know the film does have its fans. I know I was one of them for a while. And I know some people might probably like this film fine for what it is. On its own, it's probably fine enough, but as a Godzilla film, for what it is a failure through and through. And while I admit, I do still have a bit of nostalgic affection for this movie, it doesn't exactly make it a good movie looking back on it. There's plenty of movies I grew up with as a child that I can still watch today and I can still enjoy them, but this movie, it ain't one of them. So Godzilla 1998, have you seen it yet? If so, what did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Let me know down in the comments below. I'll certainly be interested to hear the feedback from this movie because a lot of people really hate this movie, but I also know a lot of people do kind of enjoy it. They have a bit of a soft spot for it, so I'll be interested to hear some of the responses for this movie review. Thank you once again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with more reviews, including ones for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and Hereditary. I have the scripts written for them and I'll be filming them sometime soon. But in the meantime, feel free to like the video, leave a comment, maybe even subscribe to my channel while you're at it, that would be much appreciated. And if there's anything I can do to improve my presentation, do let me know. I'm always happy to hear feedback as long as it's somewhat constructive. And if you want to follow me on social media or contact me via email, links below down in the description. And until next time, I'm Danny Quinn, and I hope you have a pleasant evening.